We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Thing sucks.
Yes.
All right, good. I mean, ready.
Oh, it's a good one, Jim.
Whoa.
Are we ready?
You're on.
Okay, very good. We've started Planet Green Trees, take 2. And with that being said, we're going to abbreviate the normal introduction because I know we have people waiting in the Zoom, and now we're limited only to our one and a half hours per the...
No, it'll be 2. We all know it'll be 2.
No. We're going to try to stop at 10. All right, so with that being said, I'm going to introduce everyone. We got Dan running the computer and the whole system over here, so everything's his fault.
Dirty Dan.
We got Jim Powers is here.
Yeah.
Steve Miller is here. He's back from his semi-hiatus last week. We got Amanda Joslin. It's part of a regular team. Welcome, everybody. And I'm Michael Komorn of Komorn Law PLLC. Episode number 517 of Planet Green Trees is commencing now.
Boom!
Today's date is 5/27, the year 2021. Episode titled 2 days before the day after tomorrow. Welcome, everybody who's listening. We should be live on Facebook and YouTube and other places.
We are doing this stuff live.
And we're doing it live right now. And we have a number of topics that kind of reverberate around cannabis that we can get into tonight. But let's get right to it because I know we have a number of people in the queue which all constitute guests for tonight's show. I see, let me introduce them one at a time. We have Ben Horner joining us from MMM Report and Michigan Organic Solutions. Ben Horner, thank you for joining us tonight.
The Triple M report.
Can you hear us okay?
Hey, guys.
All right, good.
Good to see you.
Good. You know, it sounds like our technology is working here. I'm just going to say I don't want to get too confident, but additionally, we have Chad Morrow from the Smokers Alley in Westland returning and joining us. Chad, welcome.
One of our regulars these days.
He is a regular.
He's a man with the plan over here.
Yeah.
It's becoming part of the routine of my week. I enjoy it.
All right. Excellent.
Actually, what would they call that? There's a name for that, like, it's like, I'm trying to think of it. All right, but anyways, and also we have the one and only Tim Beck is joining us. He is, of course, the Godfather, as known in our community, and they've listed as a marijuana activist, if that would be a title that could encompass all that the Godfather has done. But welcome, Tim Beck, as well. Thanks for joining us. Is he muted? Can he? Okay. I just want to make sure he can hear us. We can hear him. All right. So listen, the hot topic, and I guess we're going to talk right about the caregiver issue right now. Amanda, do you think we should talk about, because it's kind of the discussion and topic of the joining of our guests here? Amanda?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we were. Chad may be able to speak to this a little bit more so than myself because he was more actively involved in this process. But there's been some discussion.
Well, that's good. Listen, let me suggest this. There's that topic to talk about, which is one thing, and as we've got a genuine debate and discussion about, which I think engages everybody a little bit more. Mm-hmm. About the drive of what appears to be the licensed market, the regulated market, and its desire to want to eliminate caregivers. Now, it's odd that after all these years and the desire of the law enforcement community and even the legislature at times want to get rid of it, the caregivers still remain and are a strong force and still supplying patients throughout the state. And this is, it's not a secret that, what's his name, Linderman, is that his name?
Yeah.
Oh, Steve Linder.
Steve Linder testified before the legislature and on a number of different things. And I know Tim Beck is here to speak about that because he interacted with him. And I want to hear from the horse's mouth through Tim Beck. But what I'm getting at here, the topic that I want to explore and invite everyone to engage in here is what seems to be the regulated market's desire to want to take over all cannabis products, whether they involve THC, CBD, THC 8, Delta 8, Delta 10, 11, whatever, and
Absolutely.
and CBD.
Whatever else they can come up with.
And also eliminate, to the extent that it's a direct competition, the caregivers throughout the state of Michigan, and I would say, that this has been known and expected for a long time, but the sustainability of the caregivers has been quite remarkable, and I think there's a lot more fight in there. But anyways, with that being said, I'm going to invite everyone to engage here, but let's start it by zeroing in, if we can, about the Linder interaction as one of the leaders of this Manufacturers Association for the cannabis industry, and being invited to testify before the legislature. So they'll take steps to get all this under the House of the MRA. Tim, what do you say to that?
Tim, I believe you had a discussion with him. You're on mute right now, but
Can Tim hear us?
Mike,
Tim, can you hear us?
He's muted.
You're-
go ahead and click the little mic. Tap your picture, click the little microphone, join audio. Either that or Jimmy, if you've got the
No, it's not
Zoom
coming
room,
from here, I don't think.
No,
Ask him.
I can't unmute him. He's
There he
There
is.
you go.
There he
There
is.
he is.
I got it right. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I heard you had a question about.
Well, listen, one of the topics that we're trying to get into is the caregivers getting railroaded. We could talk about the DeRuiter opinion, the cities that keep creating these crazy ordinances. I want to talk about that. But
Right.
from within the cannabis quote unquote community, you have this new voice, an organized voice that is on the good side, arguably in the sense that they're part of the industry, and they have become now one of the biggest antagonists to the caregivers. I understand you had a conversation with the Steve Linder guy, and had some commentary on what that was about, and what do you think about that?
I don't know exactly. I don't follow this in minute detail. Let's put it this way. On an overview level, this does not surprise me. I know Steve Linder is considered, the equivalent of Satan, to some people. I wouldn't describe it as that. He's a guy he's sort of doing what he's getting paid to do. He does it fairly well. And, Ben, as you know, I did a column for your magazine very recently. And, I spoke to Steve Linder, in the context of the story, okay, in this column. It's called Protecting the Children. And it's about this Mary Whiteford, she's a state representative. I live just a mile south of the border from her.
Yeah, she's the billboard princess.
Hamoud, all right. And they're the sponsors of this goofball thing about banning billboards.
Yes.
Yeah, on marijuana, anything having to do with cannabis, everything. It's all gone. DOA. So I did this column, and I love Robin Schneider. We have been buddies for years. Steve Linder, I've known him for a long time, but I can't say we're, bosom buddies. So I thought I'd try to get him on the record, okay, about billboards, all right? And he said all the right things. And again, you can read it about it. It'll be out shortly. The guy's cool. Oh, he's not interested in having billboards banned, okay? And all the people that he represents, they're just not interested, folks. So that's probably a nothing burger. But I talked privately, well, semi-privately, and it's all on the record. I'm not going to put it, whatever. But we got to talking a little bit. It seems like what his particular thing, we didn't talk about caregivers in any great, a lot of detail. But their position, as I can surmise, is that they don't care about people growing weed for their own use, as long as it's not sold. That's kind of their bottom line.
Sure, for sure.
So, but with that, I'm not. I hear the story also about some boycott, of these big, like Green Peak and all these big, dispensary or whatever production operations. I'm not on Facebook, but I'm just kind of puzzled as to what this is going to accomplish and what the whole point is. I mean, there's never been any threat, really, overt threat from Linder, or any of these people about abolishing caregivers or whatever, or having any kind of radical, change in the law. I'm sure they talk about it all the time. And they're probably not smoking weed either.
Well,
these are kind of pretty straight. But the point being, I don't see what value this brings to the table, unless it's a kind of preempted strike, if you ever want to call. Although I've seen no evidence that a strike is, going to hit. So that's all it was.
On that particular topic, let me respond by saying this. I would make, just for play devil's advocate for a second, if you put a, just focus on what I think the article, the most pronounced neutral declaration of what was being said there was that the regulated industry should be the exclusive sellers of Delta 8 and the CBD product. Now, with that being said, one could say that is a position that is really out of line. Why? Because the cannabis that has always been prohibited, that is allowed to be regulated, is what is allowed to be regulated and has always been prohibited. And because of its remaining in that status, for commercial purposes, and even though there's some possession that's allowed from federal, what have you, it has been, and people voted for it, right? They, Merton's got this intention to not only legalize adults for their certain types of activity, but also to create a regulated market, which creates this mechanism that the legislature gets behind to help enhance, and then from there other things will happen, right? But with all that being said, you have, but that's about what I'm going to call marijuana, even though it's a weird, it's not scientific, or cannabis, as opposed to hemp, CBD. There's a whole market out there that is unregulated. It doesn't need to be regulated, one could argue, because you can walk into a gas station if you want and get CBD off the shelf there. And because you can do that and also get it in a store that may want to sell it, that's a retail place, as not as marijuana, but as like a T-shirt or a cup of soup or something, which they can do. It's not part of then they should be able to do that. But the idea that this must be part of a regulated system, number one, creates a necessity that doesn't exist. It's an overreach by the state to take something that the federal government hasn't even given those restrictions on. The other thing about the Delta 8 and the Delta 10 is the same thing about cannabis and Delta 9. It's like this crazy, we talked about this a little last week, that it's allegedly got psychoactive effects. Well, what does that mean? Is it a mood elevator? Does it make you happy? Does it make you psychotic? I mean, what are we talking? Like, there's all this nonsense that they've all of a sudden conflated this into some dangerous, chemical that now, the MRA has got to be in charge of. Anyways, that was, it's an unnecessary regulation of something that's already permitted. It's over. Anyway, that would be my counter, legal argument. But that's it.
Michael, I'm not sure, you're mixing two things up. I think, or maybe I'm the one that's mixed up. The idea of caregivers, I think it's maybe a different issue than this Delta 8.
I moved off of that. Because you said he wasn't really after caregivers, and I can circle back to that. I was saying just his testimony on that particular topic to me was, that's what I'm saying. And we've talked about that on the show a lot, because there's a number, Rob Robar and his company, Helping Hands and
Helping Friendly Cells.
Helping Friendly Cells.
Helping
Helping friendly cells.
He's built a whole brand on it, and all of a sudden now all this is going to be like gobbled up into the, and there's a lot of other people in the Michigan hemp industry that have nothing to do with cannabis. They, and it's a totally unregulated market, but no one's violating the law, and it goes on fine, and the restrictions and oversight is much less, and probably a lesson to look at, and maybe let it be instructive to how things should go going forward. Instead, we're seeing just the opposite: more laws, more regulations. Does anyone else here on the panel want to discuss or comment on the Linder topic of his or anyone else is about the grab of the MRA here to try to get this regulated under their house.
Well, of course. I mean, it's in their best interest, right?
Well, let's hear what everyone. Ben, what do you want to say? Ben, I see Ben's got his hand up.
All right, so
first of all, nobody ever puts their hands up. They just jump right in, but I appreciate that.
I try, but you don't pay attention to me.
No, he's got it on the Zoom, his hand up, I'm saying. Go ahead, Ben.
So I'm looking,
Look at that. It's like a clubhouse, the hands up.
All right, let him talk. Let him talk. He waited patiently and rose his hand. Go ahead.
All right.
Yeah. So, this article's coming out in the Michigan Marijuana Report magazine. Tim, we love having you on the magazine, writing these great insight articles with your vast wisdom, and you are the Godfather. It's a real honor to have you on board writing. You've done some writing in the past. Just like John Sinclair, legend, super activist, and you guys get to write whatever you want, interview whoever you want, do whatever you want. Now on this boycott, I've got some people that are being boycotted that, are in my magazine. I've got some people that are being boycotted that I buy their product and I sell their stuff, and I don't really see this boycott really impacting, the consumer base. I think most of the activists buy their weed, from caregivers and growers, and it's not really going to change their purchasing habits or anything like that. But there has been some success. There are some companies that are paying attention to what Linder's saying maybe he needs to work on his optics a little bit. Those optics are not very good. But let's not pretend like that's not the mission. There's a market for cannabis. It's worth a lot of money. People want their share. They don't want to share with, Chad Morrow selling it out of his smoke shop in Delta 8 form. They don't want the caregivers selling it at social clubs, in Detroit and Flint, and Bay City. And, they're passing these ordinances. And they seem like benign kind of things, like nobody's enforcing it. I think it's going to hit critical mass at some point. They will start enforcing these things.
Which ordinance? Which ordinances
do you mean? We got to have caregivers get together and, put some money aside for people like Michael Komorn that'll come out and defend them.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're coming eventually at some point or another.
Tim.
And, it would be really nice to see one of these ordinances challenged, not like McQueen, and, have a degree of success. I mean, that would be really good. And I hope that happens sometime soon. But, we got really distracted, when everyone had legalized itis in 2016 and all this legislation was going through and there's all these crazy bills and eventually caregivers got cut out. They got cut out of the MMFLA. They used to be 60 ounces every 60 days. And we cut them out when they were all distracted with by legalizing. What was that other failed one? What was that called? I forget what that other one was called, but it wasn't particularly very good. I mean, it gave people something to do, but they weren't really paying attention to being part of, a small industry. And, we keep on trying to do these things like social equity or these micro businesses, and it just doesn't translate into any small people really getting into it. So the big business, I mean, they're going to try to push people out. I want to do business with everybody. I want to be able to, buy stuff from a caregiver if I want to. I want to be able to have a dispensary if I want to. I want to buy, weed from people that are conservative, that are more socially conservative, and with people that are more liberal. I like all kinds. I think we should just try to not, shoot at our competition. I've never been like that. In Flint, we all get along. Nobody, the haters go away. They leave. And we let everyone be here. I just wish that we could kind of look at that and try to emulate that. It's too bad that, the rest of the street has to be so.
He froze.
Oh.
Can I say one thing?
I feel like Chad Morrow's being silenced right now. I want to make sure he's getting his voice.
I was waiting to see if the technical difficulties have been cleared up or not before I said it.
Go ahead, and we all want to comment, but go ahead, Chad, please. I know you've been waiting patiently.
I got two topics. I agree with a lot of what Ben had to say there. Not everything, but a lot of the stuff Ben had to say. First and foremost, getting at with the, why they the talking about the MCMA. and them wanting to be able to sell every cannabinoid, basically, even CBD, even CBN, even, these things that don't get you any kind of a euphoric psychoactive high of any kind. It's pretty, it's anti-inflammatories and things like that. But what I'm finding out at my store is that I'm selling a lot of these products, and even newer and newer products. I was just talking to Rob's salesman today about a cartridge that's going to have no Delta 8, no Delta 9, no Delta 10, but it's got, I believe he said, 62 other cannabinoids in it. And people love these, he's telling me, and so what we're finding out, though, is that initial days, like when Ben was talking about the legalization, I didn't see these things being as valuable as people just wanting to have a dispensary to get high. And now I'm seeing, as a smoke shop owner, how much CBN, CBD, Delta 8, Delta 10, and all these products that there's a market for. So it's great, and it's offensive to me in the fact that even here in the city where I'm at now in Westland with my business, there's no licensed dispensaries, medical or recreational. There's none in the town next to us in Garden City, and I'm in Metro Detroit. So if you're up north or in the UP, with the lack of the access, now we come into the next topic of the caregiver being needed still, for Christ's sakes. So they're not just somebody that wants to sell weed; they're actually still a needed service in many areas of Michigan, for one.
That's a good point.
And for two, when we talk about the boycott, I agree with a lot of things Ben's saying. People like myself, we don't go to dispensaries. People that are activists don't go to dispensaries. The people pitching and pushing the boycott don't go to dispensaries. But to say that these dispensary owners don't care about caregivers and it's been offensive, and then to say others, the opposite or whatever, the same manner, there is a difference in a lot of these people. A lot of these people were out there, trying to get this at least through for everybody. Others were they were like cockroaches waiting to come out of the shadows. And then they showed up at the steps in Lansing, Greenpeace, when I'm talking about the caregiver protest back in the day. So they have done things to earn some of this. And there has been some success out of it. As Ben had pointed out, we've already seen that Pleasant Trees has dropped out from the MCMA, and we have seen emails sporadically on social media from Flourish to their employees saying that this is not the way that they feel either. So whether this is publicity stunts or whether this is truthfully how they feel, it remains to be really seen, but it has had an effect. So, going forward, with that said, that's something I think I'll speak on in a few minutes, because I think it's a little bit more in depth, but I'll let anybody else comment now.
No, that's fine. I mean, we're really circling around two topics. One is the overreach, arguably, and even if there's a necessity for the Delta 8 CBDs and all the other cannabinoids. And just put that aside for a second. Let's return to the other one about just bouncing off one of the things that Tim had said, which is whether or not the caregivers are in the firing line or not. Now, I want to talk about that for a second and make a couple points, and I want everyone else to kind of jump in and discuss this. The caregivers at first, I think, were in a higher status and protection than they had ever been in, ironically. For all these years, as we all know, caregivers were on the chopping block. They were felonized, forfeited, destroyed, dog shot, inhumane activities. Unfortunately, many of us, brutal war we lived through, all of it didn't work anyway. So then, of course, the legalization of marijuana, which allowed for every adults to grow 12 plants at their house, it changed the dynamic of all the activity that would be suspicious of a crime that would go into an affidavit for a search warrant to raid a house: smell, trash pull, electrical, snow melting on the roof, whatever. That's under the MMA. The Court of Appeals said the MMA didn't legalize marijuana, merely made an exemption for limited class of people that were in compliance with the volume limitations, and they were immune for behavior that was otherwise illegal. The default was it's still illegal, and you got this small little, that's how they framed it. Anyways, the MRTMA unequivocally says it's intended to legalize for everybody, right? Unequivocal. All right. So And everyone can grow. So the significance of the initiation of the MRTMA was, in a lot of ways, gave cover for all that other potential rating for a caregiver, right? Because now everybody throughout the state, theoretically, that suspicion that an officer might have of the growing of marijuana in the house, it's now legal and expected that every house would have that, those factors that would trigger that suspicion. But it's no longer illegal. It's no longer an exemption for a small class of people. It's legal for everybody. So there's a huge blanket of coverage. And obviously a caregiver, with more than 15 ounces that would normally have to assert a defense of some kind now has civil infraction if the cop's even going to, screw with them and take their stuff. But so there's a lot to be said that they weren't on the chopping block. Furthermore, and ironically, even though the MMFLA had 50,000 people that they could have relied upon to supply the source for the 300,000 patients that existed at the time, the state legislature chose not to and created a completely different mechanism. And most people in the know would say, Tim, I think you'd agree, that at that time when the MMFLA was created, the caregivers were on the chopping block if they hadn't been already. Like they were ultimately going to get rid of them, right? And a lot of people would be surprised that we're still even talking about it in 2021 with that being said. If you remember, you back up 2 years or a year before, there was a suggested legislation that was going to include the caregivers as a source. That fell hard. They came back with the next one with the MMFLA. Anyways, and as I was getting to, as Ben even alluded to, there's this crazy caregiver time when the shortage of supply for the regulated market relied on the caregivers and I would say encouraged it or made exemptions for the retailers for purchasing from caregivers. And this went on for a long time, and it created a commercial market, arguably, for the caregivers that had not, a lawful commercial market to a certain degree, that had not really existed before. And it was done so in the auspices of to prevent a state of emergency, because otherwise the retail places that had been open and people relied upon would not be able to get their cannabis, and we couldn't have that happen. As if things couldn't be more ironic. Anyways, so with all that being said, things would seem to be good. And even when they stopped the caregiver supply to the market in October of, I think, 2020, or 1920, I guess, things were still okay. But then you had this DeRuyter case come out that has given I'd say, a false belief that cities can now regulate the shit out of caregivers. And I mean, they're doing it in an overly abusive and offensive way. Tim, this is what I'm saying. Throughout the state, cities and villages are coming up with these rules and implementing them from their, local governments that start with the premise that this is what the premise is. Let me start with this way. They declare them to be home occupations. Home occupations. Now, if you told anyone in 2016, 15, that caregiving was a home occupation, a business, they would that's a reason to search and seize your shit. Okay? Now the cities are declaring that caregiving is a business. And I'm talking about the basic, forget anyone that's made money in caregiving. I'm talking the basic fundamentals of the MMMA, which was that if I have 3 sick family members, I should be able to grow 36 plants for them in my basement. And they shouldn't have to go to the dispensary. If I want to do that and create some kind of medicine for them out of the medicine that I grow, that's the MMMA. That's the MMA. Now, I should be able to do that, and no government official should be able to say, you can't do that in your basement. You can't do it in a detached garage. You have to get a permission from the state to caregive. When you have
your papers in order, boy.
When you have absolute immunity from any penalty for that behavior, this is what's going on. And they're doing it, Tim, in a very overreaching way. And it's happening not as a blanket of law, one law across the board. Each crazy city and town's coming up with their own crazy shit and impeding on the basic fundamentals, starting with, if you're a caregiver, you must get a permit to do that in your home. And you have to let us in to your home so we can tell you whether or not you're violating a law or not. Think about how crazy
for
that
your
is.
own good.
No. Like, there's no search warrant shit to get in there. They want to come in and find the crime. You know, you got to let us in to find the crime. Anyways, Tim, you seem distressed by what I'm saying, or
what is Chad holding
what
up
is
here?
that, Chad?
Notice of ordinance violation.
Let Tim talk. Tim's frustrated. I'm sorry. Please, Tim, go.
What'd you do? What'd you do, buddy?
Let Tim talk.
Whatever.
Oh.
Hey, you know, I don't know what I did and what I do sometimes. I think that you're being overly pessimistic and dramatic. I have to say that with all respect. You know, I don't think it's at that level. There's isolated scenarios out there. We all know that, you know, where different cities, they take an attitude and so on and so forth. But I don't perceive it as some kind of massive purge. And, you know, my idea of caregiver has always been for caregiver. I've never, you know, the logic is caregivers, I think, are always going to have a good market as long as there are illegalities and gray areas in the law. So if it happens really quiet, you know, you can pay the light bill. You know, you can do even a lot more. And this is the logic with caregivers. That's how I understood the role. It's not going to be some big business operation, some gazumba corporation.
True, and I would say it shouldn't be assumed that every caregiver thinks of it as a business. Some people may genuinely want to caregive 24
I agree. I think, Michael, the market for caregivers right now, okay,
right.
And I've heard about the studies, please hear me out. I'll be very, very quick here. The market is Indiana, Ohio, outstate market. Let's get real here.
All right, but that assumes a crime taking place. I'm just getting back this general idea. We have the state law. It authorizes
is it
certain,
a crime?
Hold on. It authorizes certain behavior, and if the idea is that these criminal activities going on and sending it out of state, that's not a reason to end caregiving. There are some people that still benefit and apply by the rules. I know what you're saying, Tim. I'm not being, you know, overly naive. I know what we're saying, but from a legal perspective, that, you know, that's the talk of the industry, right? There's all these other, you know, black market, gray market, but the basic principles of caregiving, you know, if there's one person that does it the right way, isn't that enough reason to say, you know, you don't eliminate that? If there's 5 patients out there that are relying on one caregiver that they're taking care of, they get a bunch of oil, aerosol that they could never afford to buy at a dispensary or something like that. You know what I mean? Just because the amount of concentrated oil that they're going to take is too much. You know, there are reasons why caregiving exists, and I'm sure there's a percentage of patients that maybe go to both or still rely on caregivers. And I'm not saying that there isn't another market out there, but I'm saying this. And I'm talking about caregiving that does not contemplate it as an occupation. I'm not talking about that. You know what I mean? I'm talking about now. With that being said, and you know, Tim, I can't. I would say this. I would make the point, and I don't, you know, like, there's no dispute here. My perception, and it may be because I'm a lawyer and I hear all the terrible stories, but there is a lot more of a take. And it may be pockets. Like in Macomb County, they're going crazy. Macomb County, almost every city is banning caregiving, okay?
They are.
Name some other towns and cities. I mean, how about this? Genesee County, the homeland of caregivers, the ones where all kinds of industry went crazy. You have Burton, Clio, Mount, which one? Flushing. Thetford, Eric Gunnels was trying to pass a law that let caregivers go wild. Like, let's let them have an industry. Let's let them pay taxes, which is kind of a good idea, but the state's not going to let them do that. The state's going to shut them down before they can go anywhere. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I know that's a debate for another day. I'd have to show you with some kind of empirical data.
It'll be because they're no longer, what's that term? Sorry, but economically viable. That's part of the idea. That's usually how. Sure.
I mean,
that's how I think the reality play itself out.
I agree. I mean, listen, Michigan is unique, generally speaking, because you have 72 plants being grown by one particular individual, which is a unique, widget collection and commodity in and of itself. And there's a battle for that, right? Because that is either going to remain to come from those sources, or it's going to come from a more exclusive source through the state of Michigan. So we knew this was the case, but
well, it hasn't happened yet. It hasn't happened yet. I mean, there's no evidence, really, seriously, that this is going to happen anywhere in the caregivers. I mean, I just can't even. It's just hard to wrap my head around. I mean, this is going to take a lot of heavy lifting.
What's happening at the local level is what I'm saying.
I understand, and some people say it's going to go to a judge. It's all
right.
already decided, but still, there's just some communities. A lot of these in small communities, in small towns. Hey, I live around here, in rural Michigan. I've been here since 2014, and I no longer identify southeastern Michigan as my home.
Right.
Detroit as my bearing. But
are they banning it up there? Are they banning caregiving?
Hell no, it's a very bastardized situation. If you're on the wrong side, the town supervisor or the local, club that runs the township.
Yeah.
You're kind of out of it. You ain't gonna make it.
You're gonna run out of town, right?
A lot of these are like kind of internal fights between different individuals wanting power in one form or another on the marijuana issue.
Right, so you can understand how they gang up, legislatively speaking, based on all that you're describing, this kind of local gang that runs the city, and they ban it. And they say, this is as bad as you're ever going to see it anywhere, and even though for, however long it's been that we haven't been, we're doing it now. And everyone's a little bit different, so it's forcing the caregivers to either capitulate or to individually challenge all of it. It's just an interesting strategy. I don't know. I mean, I think it's there's another argument, Tim, of whether or not there's going to be legislation overtly directed to eliminate the caregiving. That's always a possibility. I mean, I don't know that there's any evidence that it's happening or that it's pending right now, but with some of the crazy stuff that's been...
They're working on it.
Oh, David,
they're working on it.
Oh, how? David, explain to us how. What do you know?
Well, there's a lobby. There's a lobby right now, and I think that's what Chad over here is pretty concerned about. There's a lobby right now to cut down on plant counts or eliminate caregivers altogether, and it's by a lot of the sort of corporate cannabis groups, and I think that there's varying degrees of these corporate cannabis groups and what they feel should be the changes to the MMA.
All right, let me stop you there. Okay, David. We're trying to be more specific about this. I mean, there's obviously a theory, and we could tell you the police have wanted this forever, and maybe there's some, lobbyist that someone has that's in those circles and could tell us. But what specifically are you saying? Because I know that we just went through this Linder guy that he maybe, I don't know, is that what you're talking about? Is he made an overt statement that he wants to go after caregivers? Tim would say no. I'm just playing a neutral here. Or is there somebody else? Is there not?
My understanding is that Linder has made explicit statements that he wants to amend the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act and get rid of caregiver rights. And that's why, like Pleasantries, for example, I know a lot of people are sort of hating on them, but they separated from them because that's not what their view is, regarding that. They said, look, Steve Linder doesn't speak for us. We're out of that group. And a lot of groups have stayed with them. So apparently they feel he does. But my understanding is that they're explicitly lobbying to amend the MMMA rather than, I think like groups like Pleasantries, I'm friends with some people within that group. I think they just want to see the rules that are currently in place properly enforced, which is a very different thing. I mean, there's literally 1,000 or hundreds of illegal marijuana delivery services let's be real, they're not caregivers. They are operating illegal marijuana businesses without a license.
Who are you talking about?
What? I'm talking about go on the internet and search for marijuana delivery service.
Okay, David.
Right?
All right, listen to me. Listen to me.
Delivery,
Listen to me. Listen to
check
me.
if they're licensed.
Okay, fine. Listen to me. Listen to me. That is, I mean, here's the thing. You have a regulated industry, and you have caregivers. And the premise of the discussion of caregivers is not a definition of what the antagonists to the caregivers want to describe them as a black market, renegade, non-licensed, non-tax-paying group of people. We're going to use the definition of what a caregiver is, which is a person who has signed up to possess the 12 plants and grow the 12 plants on behalf of the patient and keep it in an enclosed-like facility and not possess more than 2.5 ounces per patient. That in and of itself is what a caregiver is. Now, if to say that caregivers have engaged in commercial activity over the years, it's true. In fact, that sometimes the state was even encouraging it, in need of it, and asking to prevent a state of emergency, right? But when we talk about caregiving, we're talking about them in the context of this, that the sale of marijuana is not the sale of a controlled substance, and a caregiver may receive compensation for costs. That is not a business in its purest sense. In fact, you and I know that if the police believed that a caregiver was running a business, they would be raided. Now, with all that being said, and with the greatest amount of irony arising out of places like Genesee County, places a lot in Macomb County, cities and villages are now creating ordinances banning caregiving. And they're doing it across the board. They're not saying you have $100,000 of cash buried in your backyard and never paid taxes. They don't say that. They say, if you're a caregiver, this is how it's going to be now.
Yeah,
or else
I mean, that's obviously bullshit,
okay.
Right? Like, I want to see caregivers protected more than anybody.
Well, that's
I've been fighting to protect caregivers for 10 years. But the problem is there's a group of people sort of disguising themselves as caregivers, right? And they're saying they're caregivers when they're not. They're not concerned about patients. They're concerned about running a business and trying to use, and they're giving other caregivers sort of guy that they don't deserve. The real caregivers.
They say that about David. David, listen to what you're saying. David, listen to what you're saying. They say the same things about lawyers. They say the same things about doctors. They say the same things about caregivers and insurance salesmen and policemen.
Yeah.
Okay, there's some good guys and bad guys. You don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? What's that statement? You don't cut it.
I agree 100%.
Right.
We got to protect the caregivers, and I think my personal feeling is the way that we deal with this problem of sort of the illegal businesses is not by no caregiving in our city, but just simply let's take the guys who are doing this on a commercial scale and shutter, it should be dealt with on a civil basis, like all the lawsuits that me and you have been fighting for the last 10 years. It shouldn't have been criminal. It shouldn't have ever been criminal. That's my thing. But if you're operating a business, just like any other business, you're not allowed to operate a business without a license, right? And there are civil ways to deal with businesses that are doing that. We don't need to jail people over cannabis. That's insane. I don't care, essentially what you're doing with cannabis. And we definitely need to allow people the right to grow their cannabis plants in their home. And what cities are doing needs to be fought. But I also don't necessarily agree with, we have a regulated system and licenses to do this on a commercial scale. And I think that needs to be enforced.
All right, so your answer to how? All right, so you're in favor of caregivers. You're against those taking advantage of the caregiver system, and they should be dealt with in a civil way. What does anyone else say to that, Tim? What do you say to that? Is that that's a position that still supports the existing law that people wanted, and it offers up an option of a solution? What do you say to that? Is that a workable scenario? Tim, I was asking you. Can you hear?
Yeah, I'm here. My mind did.
Sure.
Had wandered, but yeah. I don't know. Caregiver. I don't. The caregiver thing. It's a thing that's going to. Number one, it's not a problem. There's no demonstrable problem with caregivers. Okay, in terms of people dying, people going insane. horrible accidents, murders, killings, bad weed where somebody chokes to death or whatever you want to come up with. It's benign, it's completely safe and solid, and there's no reason to change it. I mean, thinking that, competition is good. I mean, it really is. Monopolies, no. So one of the things about trying to, like legislate stuff, be careful what you're doing.
Sure.
And I'm kind of like a no change guy,
right?
So to speak. Let it ride. I mean, I don't see, at this point it's a serious threat. Eventually, the caregiver system will diminish. I mean, part of it's based upon individuals that have medical marijuana cards,
right?
And there is a trend, if people just, well, what do I need a medical marijuana card for? So the caregiver, legitimate number, the patient level goes down to some degree, and that's an issue that I think legitimately the caregivers will have to deal with.
So what you're saying, and I agree, like that. So really, what we're getting back in is that if we accept the premise that it's unfair for the regulated market people to not compete. It's not that they're competing with caregivers. That shouldn't be an issue. It's the other people here that are taking advantage of if they if they exist. And Tim's saying, well, they aren't affecting it so much, and we really there's nothing that really needs to be changed. And when that happens, it'll happen. David was suggesting that they be dealt with in a civil infraction. Chad, did you want to jump in? If that's is that something that the city should be?
Because I agree with David. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on as far as lobbying, from what I'm understanding and from what I'm hearing from a lot of people that I know, against the, not necessarily. I haven't heard eliminating them completely. I've heard a lot of talks of restricting plant counts down to 12 to match up with like basically the rec, which would pretty much be eliminating it anyways, I guess. But getting back to what Dave's saying too about, these illegal quote unquote businesses and delivery services, nothing needs to be changed about the Medical Marijuana Act when it comes to this stuff, or anything else, in my opinion. It's good the way it is. People wrote it, people read it, people voted on it, and that's what we want. As far as how you handle things, I mean, not to get into politics, but I mean, they silenced Donald Trump off of Twitter. So I mean, you could simply, I'm sure there's a way of passing legislation of some sort that's going to say, these people, can't be, advertised on freaking Google. There's a lot of other things that are taken off. So without affecting the Medical Marijuana Act. And as far as all these townships, I think it's a lot bigger problem than some people realize. I live in a city. The thing I was showing earlier has nothing to do with marijuana, but it does bring in a point here. My lawnmower's I had a carburetor issue. I had to get a new carb, so it's in service. I'm getting it back in 2 days. With my lawn got like 5 inches long, and I got an ordinance violation. So for a simple lawn, it's like literally I don't own much. It's a $75 administration ticket and a $325 cut fee if the city does it. We're talking $400. So, this is what the city wants, is the money. That's why they're doing this. They want to get in there. They want if they see, the enforcement, they want money, and they'll hit you, in my opinion. And that's proof rate. The other thing is when we're talking about marijuana. So, then the enforcement likes to lead into, the ordinance officer likes to talk or, tip off the other officer at the city or the township police, and the next thing you know, they're knocking at your door. And it's not just the lobbying either. I mean, we've talked before without naming any names, but there's businesses that are calling in tips and tipping off people already, and there's obviously already penalties and charges, because I personally have friends up north, Joslin, Michigan, that are being charged because they were doing the donation thing at their grow store, and they're being charged with felony delivery. They're being charged with running
criminal enterprise, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the actual term. I'm not a lawyer.
CCE.
CCE.
Criminal
Not to be
enterprise.
confused with CEC.
Don't confuse them,
You know,
Jim.
so I mean, these are serious charges, though. You know,
Yeah, very
these aren't
serious.
misdemeanors. So between that, I mean, these things are happening in a state that we legalized marijuana in a way that we said we were going to stop putting people in prison and behind bars all the time for a plant. That I don't see it. I don't see. Sure, the simple possessions and you know, you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. But you know, in certain areas, you know, the Don Baileys still exist out there. Okay, there's a lot of them guys up there throughout the state. Going forward, I agree with a lot of these things. You know, we need to protect the act, but the thing is we don't have a voice. You know, when you come, you know, we can call our representatives. Tim's probably, you know, had a lot better luck than I have with his, you know, status. But myself, every time I write or try to get a hold of anybody, I get some just generic, you know, send back from them. You know, I don't get in their office. You know, so how do we do that? You know, they do it because they have lobbyists. They do it because they have money. They do it because they have the suits. They get to, like you said earlier, like Ben said, they get to make the press releases, you know, in the newspaper. And we see all these crazy stories in the news, you know. Some girl in Dearborn took a hit off wax, ran out and, you know, went after a dog in the car.
No, that was Plymouth. That was Plymouth.
That's on our list
I
of
believe that
topics.
was one of our topics for the
So fear-mongering 101, though, and we can't respond to it unless occasionally you get in the newspaper as yourself, then you're labeled just as, you know, oh, you're just, you know, Joe Blow down the road that lives at such and such street. You know, you don't have any kind of a factor or a name or a title or an organization. So that's where, you know, I've been pushing that the caregivers, we should basically unite.
Caregivers Union.
Form an actual, you know, nonprofit organization.
Absolutely.
We've come up with a name, you know, the United Cannabis Caregivers Association. You know, get these people involved, get a board, have votes, make proper decisions, do this the right way, have the documents with the IRS, have the documents with the state of Michigan. And when these things happen, get donations, do it like these other people, you know, like some people do with clubs, you know, get memberships of the caregivers, annual things, get some fees, get a lawyer, get a lobbyist, and get a voice, you know, and protect what we have already done.
Let me say this. Chad, I was going to ask one question. You know, I guess it could come back to whether, you know, what is the platform?
Can't hear Michael.
Am I off? All right. I mean, what would be the platform? Like, you know,
I can hear you.
Does the platform include a silence on what David Rudoi was suggesting is giving caregivers a bad name? Are they going to be silent on it? Are they going to be proactive against it? Is there going to be an answer for that? You know, in terms of, or you know, because obviously it's come up, and that's what's drawing all the attention back to the caregivers, right? I wanted to say something, though, before we got there, because I was really trying to get at, is there a solution here? David suggested civil infractions. Chad, I don't know if we got to that, but if you give a
There's a solution, but it's not going to be the one we
I would say this. I'd say it's interesting because it's I don't know that the answer, as David was suggesting, is in the direction of, you know, law enforcement or, say, you know, public safety enforcement, because that's just more prohibition. I think it's an important time to step back and really see what's taking place. One of the better, easier answers is to open up the market more and let more folks into it. You know, that reduces a quote unquote black market. By penalizing people that are black marketing is just more prohibition. You know what I mean? It just makes it more illegal, and that just doesn't fucking work ever. It's just never a solution. So why does the black market thrive right now? It's not because there's caregivers. It's because there's still a demand because the price is high. There's a supply that is created from this, which can get it cheaper to the market. In other states that exist, I mean, the idea is not to make it more and more illegal and hurt people more from. That's not the intention. It's to neutralize that market. And in the long run, you know, if it's true that the MRTMA's intention is to Michigan's regulate and tax marijuana like alcohol, then we have to see a visual down the road of something that looks like you walk into a gas station and there's a cooler with beer in it, and some guy or girl delivered that in their truck that did it across the state the same way, and no one's making Budweiser beer in their bathtub anymore because you can get it everywhere and it's cheap and it's available and there's no need to compete for it. We're a long ways away from that, you know. But I'm saying, politically speaking, the issue is this. I think Tim, this is a long-standing problem and phenomena. Adam Brooke would be agreeing with me if he was on right now. It's that the people that have been in charge of this next run, this run after legalization, are not marijuana people. You know, the people that got into the industry at first were not marijuana people. So the marijuana people despise everything about where they're going. The criticisms, the decisions that are being made are not with anyone else in mind, or the history of cannabis and what Michigan has gone through when it's taking place. There's a void of a voice for certain, and it's unfortunate, but I don't know that the answer is to create more crimes. I think that the state really wanted to be more proactive. I mean, look, I think the problems go back to these same cities that are trying to ban it.
I'm not talking about creating more crimes or prohibiting more conduct.
All right,
I'm talking about the law, what it is right now. Like, there are people that are not following any semblance of the laws as they exist. They're not. It's not that. I would actually, like, the one thing I disagree with what Chad said, I agree with almost all of it, is there is something that could be amended in the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, which is to up it from 2.5 ounces for 12 plants, because that makes no sense.
Yeah,
I think
agree.
that's a common sense change. But besides that,
First of all,
I'm not talking about more prohibition. I'm talking about the fact that people are operating businesses with no license.
all right, listen. First of all, David, do not talk.
Okay.
Do not talk out loud about ever amending the MMA. Once it gets opened up, it's what
You
they.
want it to be 2.5 ounces?
I'm saying don't talk about it ever. I mean, there's a lot of things that could be done. A lot of
they'll amend the act and then take the
David.
plant limit down to 2.
Yeah, it's not a
No,
time
I
for
want
doing
to
it.
be 72 plants and 72 pounds or something like that.
Why not 15 patients? Consolidate them or something like that. Let the ones that are really doing it, I don't know, like those kind of things would work. You know what I mean? Or let them into the market. Let them sell to the market if they want. Who cares? And then get them inspected that way or something. You know what I mean? Like buy into the market as a caregiver. I don't know.
Not to interrupt, but I mean, just totally off topic, kind of on topic. I mean, look at Ann Arbor. Not with necessarily, marijuana, but they just voted and decriminalized, basically a lot of hallucinogenic plants. And since that happened, a delivery service has even popped up.
Wow,
there's nothing happening.
that's pretty solid.
I'm moving to Ann Arbor and starting a business.
It's pretty cool.
They would have to,
They
you're
even interviewed the prosecutor, and they're like, "Hey, it's decriminalized. It's the lowest level of prosecution." So maybe that's the approach we should take. Maybe we should hit some of these communities.
Where is Yusuf Rabi? Where's he out of?
To make Delta 8, regulated.
Oh.
And he's out of Ann Arbor.
Huh.
He's definitely no Jeff Irwin in my opinion, but that's another discussion.
Yeah,
And with that, I guess that'll be our next topic.
You're more likely to get prosecuted by the city
Probably
attorney
not.
in Ann Arbor for psilocybin delivery than the state would.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's take a break. We'll be back. Everyone, please stay with us.
You're listening to Planet Green Trees.
Start doing some big.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org.
Hello, this is John D. Lamb from Planet Green Trees TV. Congratulations, Hash Bash, on your 50th annual. This goes out to all your dads out there who ever got in trouble for smoking pot. Your smile is legal now, don't frown. Show some teeth, don't look so down. Hold your head up high, have a ball. You weren't so bad after all. Your smile is illegal now, don't cry. Let me be that twinkle in your eye. You paid the price, took a fall, but you weren't so bad after all. Busted in your high school parking lot, busted in your college dorm. Then you trusted a narc and you got popped on the day your son was born. Misdemeanors, felonies and fines, paranoia, probation times. They watching you pee in the lavatory, a gallon of clean tea. Naturally, you had a record the year you had me. Your smile is legal now, so get high. Might do you some good, give it a try. Your smile is legal, wake and bake. Your smile is legal, have some cake. Happy birthday, Dad, I just had to call. You weren't so bad after all.
Double shift in the heart of the city, sun's going down. I'm about to get ready to close my eyes, get some rest and dream of a life that's better than this. Pull the shades close and turn off the light, climb into bed and the rest of my life fades away oh so fast. The next thing you know, I'm gone in a flash. A big blue world that was full of fire, I was soaring through the air in my radio flyer. That's when I saw you standing in the sunlight. Yeah, the fire in your eyes was so surreal. Somehow I thought it could all be real, wishing that this moment in my life would last forever. Every night I dream so we'd be together. My alarm went off and the sun came up, and I was back to work and just my luck. Breaking my back just to stay afloat. I can't stay awake, I need an antidote to keep my fears and my blues away. Well, it's getting heavy at the end of the day. I bust out the door, down the road. Yeah, to finish what I started, no we're telling where it might go. Out to a big blue world that was full of fire, I was soaring through the air in my radio flyer. That's when I saw you standing in the sunlight. Yeah, the fire in your eyes was so surreal. Somehow I thought I could all be real, wishing that this moment in my life would last forever. last too long. Though my feelings now for you are strong. You take my hand, all we leave the ground, we're flying. To a big blue world that was full of fire. I was soaring through the air in my radio flyer. That's when I saw you standing in the sunlight. Yeah, the fire in your eyes was so surreal. Somehow I thought it could all be real. Wishing that this moment in my life would last forever. Oh, and every night I dream so we could be together. Oh, and every night I dream so we could be together. Yeah, and every night I dream so we could be together. Yes, I do. Oh, I dream of you. Nuts together. I dream of you.
Now back to more Planet Green Trees. And now back to more Planet Green Trees.
Final countdown.
So we're back now?
Back.
We're back. Thanks for staying with us. There's a side discussion of the things that not everyone on the call here is in agreement on whether the caregiver issue is rising to the level of such a discussion that we're having. I think it varies throughout the state, and each person's having different experiences. David, you're biased like I am because you're getting calls from those people, whether it's a lot, whether it's fair to say it's so pronounced that it's, creates this kind of situation or not. But, and I guess the question is, a bigger question is, if there's a threat to care, I'm saying this objectively, I think that there is, I'm just playing neutral. If there is a threat to caregivers, where is the knifing going to come from? Is it going to come from the legislature, as we've kind of discussing here in the grander picture, or is it going to come from the cities that are going to kill by death by 1,000 cuts is the way I would describe it, right? They're going to just one by one just tear it till it bleeds to death. Which is it, David Rudoi? What do you say?
Well, what I fear probably the most, I think amending the MMA is going to be difficult. What I fear probably the most is the cities. It's kind of like what's going on with the abortion rules. Is the city's over-regulating caregivers and saying, like, you can't do it in residential, and now that they have the right to inspect your home and all these crazy rules. And probably what I'm the most afraid of is the wrong challenge gets taken up, and the Supreme Court says, like, basically that's okay, or the Court of Appeal says that city ordinances like that are okay, because then a lot of cities are going to jump on board, and that will be a real problem for caregivers long term. All these ordinances, caregiving's not supposed to be a business, and people need to be able to do it in their home. They need to be able to go 72 plants.
And the only way that they can even begin the premise of being able to regulate and require a license is to start the ordinance premise with that caregiving is a home occupation. Therefore, if you're growing, if you're farming and producing soybeans and selling them out your front door, you can do so without a state license for doing that under the home occupation rule. But there's limitations to it. And based upon that, the city might be able to regulate some of that behavior. Like, how many people can come per day or how often in certain hours of the day, all those kind of things. Because you're now getting into a quasi-commercial residential setting. And it's allowed for under the home occupations rule. It's been amended different times, allowing for different amounts to be taken in, different regulations associated with it. It stands alone as its own entity. But the idea that the cities has a premise and a belief that they're able to step into this area of regulation is that these are home businesses. And I think that, but anyways, so your answer to the question is that, listen, I don't think it's going to be difficult to amend the MMMA. That's my concern, David. You alluded to that. Tim Beck, I want to get your thoughts on this. And before I let you answer that question, I'll make this comment. You can comment on this as well. The current mindset of the legislative body does not speak for a caregiver. It speaks for the concept of either I'm in favor of, the law is passed, but now that it's passed, we're all in favor of what? This regulated system. More rules and rules and laws and rules. So it's it doesn't contemplate how we got here. It doesn't contemplate empathy for those broken backs and eyes that have been gouged out in these fights, these cage fights and stuff. And so it's real easy for either party, like the center of either of those parties, to kind of say, oh yeah, we're all in favor of tax and regulate, whatever. Now that it's passed law, screw these caregivers. What do you say about that? Is that what's happening in government right now, Tim? Is it now that it's happened, that's an easy thing for people to sign on for?
It's not an easy thing. It's not meant to be an easy thing. You see, the way the law is written, the one that passed in 2018, it does give quite a bit of power to local authorities. And they have a clear ability, to regulate marijuana. They don't have to have any marijuana businesses in their community at all. That's law. They're on, they got the high ground on that one. So it's legitimate. They can do it. And for me, I wouldn't even want to live in a place like that, or I might, kind of get involved, try to change it. But on the other hand, I think it's an overly exaggerated threat. That's how I see it.
I hear you. All right, so not convinced it's a problem. David or Chad, what do you think? You think it's going to come from the cities? Obviously, a lot of your desires to want to build this coalition and gather groups and having a voice for speaking is, there may be things because the caregivers don't have any of that now, but you're doing it under the pretense of the threat is real. And explain more maybe what the impetus and motivation was for your desires on this.
The way I see it is I can't, I'm not going to speculate. I can only say for what I know for fact. What I know for fact is what I've lived through. I've lived in the gray area before the business were regulated. We were trying to show what a regulated system, I guess, should look like as part of this dispensary and stuff. And it, you know, we all know what resulted with me getting in cuffs and guns up. And like I said, that's still going on over there some places. And that needs to stop. I think this needs to be handled 100% civilly to protect them. I believe that these townships, cities, whatever that are doing this, you know, I know it's happening, and I know it's not just one or two or three or four. I mean, it's a lot. There is a lot that's doing this, and I think it's a concept that, you know, some of these people even have like, well, ours isn't that bad. If you look at the neighbor over here, but anybody's going to get hit, challenged. So there does need to be a challenge, and I know that's happening. So I guess I would agree with the death by 1,000 cuts. As far as what's going on in the state, that, you know, I can't say for fact because I don't have anybody in the state, nor do the caregivers. Nobody's going in there and talking to anybody for us. So what do we know? What do we really know? Other than what we hear, I think we do the fact that there are lobbyists and therefore the businesses that are talking about things that will affect us. We need to get somebody in there for facts so we know what's going on and we have somebody speaking for us.
So there's people out there. I mean, I can tell you that, you know, if you named the group Cannabis Patients United, CPU.
Yep.
It goes way back when. You know, Dave Brogren's a guy. Yep. Craig Canterbury, Tim Knowlton. Yeah, there were others. Yeah, Robin was involved in it a little bit, but it was like the names that I had mentioned, and but this was a caregivers thing. Yeah, that was it would be a caregivers union, a caregiver, an entity that was going to fight, you know, at all costs with these Walsh bills. There would be no compromise on caregivers. We were not going to go anywhere. That's going to stay exactly, you know, as was, and that worked. Now that did work out. I mean, it's almost a caregiver thing was really deeply enshrined, you know, in law, you know, at that point. And everybody, I mean, Rick Jones, the whole crew, I mean, they basically signed off on it. So I'd say it's going to be, you know, very tough to reverse. You know, some whacked out thing happens. You know, some caregiver goes nuts. I mean, just some black swan event, some crazy ass thing happens. I don't, you know, I think, to me, I don't even like to think or in trying to visualize like an attack on caregivers. Sometimes it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah, you know, that's just kind of how my sense of it. And, you know, at this moment, I don't see, you know, a heck of a threat. Yeah, of course, down the road, there's people, would like to whack jobs, other people get it or whatever. Eventually, that might want to get rid of you. But the fact of the matter is, you know, caregivers would, they hope, become irrelevant on a grand scheme of things. And so that's where I think the thing's coming from, or the logic, you know, that's being used. And not like, hey, I'm not in favor of suppressing anybody. I'm not looking for a change in the law about this, you know, one way or another. I mean, it's really, you know, but there doesn't seem to be much of a threat. We seem to be handling it pretty well, you know, as a community. That's how I look at it. You know, no, I mean, it seems like people, I don't know, persecuted, but the idea is, hey, people are, you know, don't want people that just want to pay the light bill. Okay, just got something going. You know, that is the caregiver scenario, as I understand, or I always understood it more or less. And so that's going to be preserved, I'm certain. You know, I think it'll be around for a long time. And again, there's a business need. And remember how caregivers filled in. Oh my God, they couldn't. I mean, the perfect bill that we had was that one that everybody agreed on, Mike Bouchard. You know, and some of these people sort of, well, queered it or whatever. And I mean, that's a you know, they didn't like Mr. Bouchard and his crew, but yeah, we had a really good thing going because caregivers would have been the core. That would have been fair to every. No, there is no person that I know that disagreed with that law, and then it just got whacked. Right at the last minute. That was a tragedy, and then had to start all over again. And then all these other people got vamped scene. But just a thought. What about this Delta 8 thing? I like this Delta 8 personally. I got it, from a friend of ours.
It's got a lot of medical benefits. People like the edibles a lot. Unfortunately, I'm out of them at my shop right now, and I got to get a whole bunch more. I'm actually placing a big order with Rob, who they mentioned earlier, so I can get those in my shop. But yeah, I mean, I'm stocking up, basically thinking that they're going to ban it eventually. But if I stock up, they'll at least let me sell through it, hopefully. Even now, we'll see how it goes. But just to back up really quick though on something you were saying too. I didn't really finish because we were talking more about caregiving directly, but just to touch too on like the business end of it, or the false businesses, or the townships. Some of these townships are trying to make people register, a home occupation. Dave, is he like, oh yeah, he mentioned these delivery services, and I see some people like I mentioned, we need to, like I mentioned, go civilly and stuff, but without changing the Medical Marijuana Act, I think if you got somebody in Lansing to lobby possibly to add some legislation to the recreational law possibly, to take it a little step further. So the people with the overages, because like Dave said, 2.5 ounces to 12 plants even, is silly. Every recreational person that's over the age of 21 can grow 12 plants, which is a lot more than 2.5 or 5 or 10. I mean, and we can all keep the yield of everything that we have per the law. So with that said, there would be an way with events, with social lounges, with these things, to make things like, some of these places that have existed in places like Genesee County, for instance, to pay the state, to pay some taxes, and legally be able to operate with the regular mom and pops and Joes and James and everybody else that's got and that would help everybody. We just they'd be getting some tax revenue, more businesses would be created, and these licenses would be getting used. And they're less expensive licenses, lounges and stuff like that. Great opportunity for social equity applicants. Just a thought.
Yeah, there's some logic to that. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you threw it out.
Hey, what did you say earlier? It's not an easy task. Nothing was meant to be easy.
Oh, man.
So I heard, like, last week there was a ban of Delta 8 in Colorado.
And a Rooney Doody.
Did we talk about that? Yeah, I don't know. We might have mentioned.
I'm hearing, was it New York, I believe?
There's several states, but
Alaska,
Colorado.
Washington.
Yeah, there are several states. It's just Colorado, I think, was the most recent
Shocking.
one. That was, yeah. I was like, come on, you guys.
Yeah, I don't know. And that's another thing. Working as a smoke shop, Rob's salesman, his name's Dan, he says to me on the phone, he says, I don't work with many smoke shops, honestly, but geez, it feels like I'm working with a dispensary right now. You should be working. And I said, let's not even get, going there, geez, oh, Pete. But I have that same conversation all the time, similar with the customers, they're like, what the hell? It had today, as a matter of fact. Like, what the hell is Delta 8? This is, I don't even trust it. It looks fake. This, so many questions you get. And it leads into the next conversation of, we don't even know, not if it's fake or, but we don't even know what's about to come. Like, this is going to be an evolving door nonstop of all these new cannabinoids now that it's becoming legal. The feds obviously are becoming a little bit warmer and warmer, slowly but surely, which creates, more opportunity for scientific research and I mean, they got cannabinoids that don't even have a name for it, from what I've read over in Israel and stuff like that. You know, so like, God only knows what we're gonna do with all this isolation and everything that they're doing now in the lab with this stuff. So, you know, that's what I mean. That could be a huge market that we don't necessarily corner down into just dispensaries. It's not something that's going to get you high. What if you find out a cannabinoid is good for, you know, like a protein shake or something when you're going to the gym? Or for instance, Steve Green brought up a great point that, you know, like he said, what if I'm somebody that, if they were to go after caregivers, this is bringing that back. What if I can't go for myself? They take away caregiving, and I need fresh plant material to be used. Can you get that from a dispensary? I don't know of a single one. Something. You know.
Yeah, that was actually a good question about the. I haven't ever heard or seen that myself, and you know, I mean, even Michael can attest to there's a lot of medicinal value from juicing.
I mean, we had a special show about it where a lot of experts were opining in on that, and I think it goes without saying. Jim can attest to that because I think a lot of the juvenile patients that he was working with through Michigan Parents for Compassion were
a lot of autistic kids would use the
juicing, right?
Yeah.
There's this, you know, that's the negative thing about not having a voice in there, because, you know, the lawmakers, they don't know. They're not doing this. They're not dealing with this. They're not juicing cannabis and knowing the benefits of this, and they ain't reading about it or looking into it. Not the majority of them, or anything to do with it, you know. So, you know, the people that honestly have a lot of the knowledge of this stuff are the caregivers. Other aspects, you know, the true to earth caregivers at this point, we've got 10 plus years of experience. I shouldn't say we at this point, but, you know, the caregivers as a whole, you know, unfortunately I can't be a caregiver now because of the bullshit of the law and the gray areas that have gone over in the past. And even with that said, even the new expulsion law, I still got to wait 5 more years before I can get the marijuana charges taken away. You know, so there's a lot of things brought up on our behalf in Lansing still.
Well, there's still a lot of injustices that are going on. That's always been one of the things, you know, the system piles on in this regulation. A lot of the damage done isn't really contemplated. I'll tell you this. I just bring this to some of Chad and Tim, and I don't know if Ben is still with us. If he has, I feel bad that I haven't given him more time to talk if he wanted to. But if he's listening, please jump back in. But no one's heard this before, but it's an interesting dynamic. It falls within this crack. Tim, of course, it's not something that's so pronounced that it needs this kind of attention. But this is one individual. So the MMA is an interesting dynamic in that if a patient is under the age of 18, 17 or 18, they have to have signatures of 2 physicians. What?
2, yes.
2. They have to explain to the parents whatever they can tell them about cannabis, if that is a thing. And the parent or legal guardian has to be the caregiver by law, and they then are responsible for the patients or child patients, their child or the guardian to whom child they are the guardian, being responsible for their acquisition, dosing, and frequency of use. All right, so the scenario developed, I had not heard about it in the past. I don't know if it happened, I mean, first time that where a mother is under the age of 21 years old, Tim. So you have to be to be a caregiver, you got to be under the age of 21, right?
Over the age.
You got to be over the age of 21. Otherwise, you'd qualify. But and by law, she has to be the caregiver. The father's not in the picture. The kid has been certified by
2 doctors,
2 physicians, and let me say this: there's some Latin phrase that's escaping me, but it means something to the effect of,
"You dumbass."
What I'm about to, you know, like the legal result could not be that because it's absurd. Like this cannot be the legal result in Latin, to which she would have to give up legal custody in order for a kid to have a 21 years of age older guardian to acquire and control dosing. I mean, that's the scenario that's set up, and I was surprised. So we're appealing that one. We're looking for some relief from the Circuit Court of Ingham County. Just an inch, just an inch. I don't know. I mean, it's
could be worse. Ingham County's not horrible.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, listen. I know it's not a major for this family. It's very, very important. But from what do you think as a
describe it as a domestic dispute? It just got a little out of control. I mean, that's one explanation about all. But people need to have attorneys and to help them.
Right. But in terms of this this mother who's not 21, and this kind of vacancy of what does that situation call for? Well, the state said no, you can't be a caregiver, which means so she's not authorized. No one is authorized in giving this kid cannabis right now.
Penalty? What is the penalty under law? I would be curious about that. What is the worst case? What is the absolute worst that could happen?
They take her child.
They'll take her child. I mean, she loses any. I mean, all of the penalties that still exist are regarding under the age of 21. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a plethora of problems and more arguments that it doesn't even protect. I mean, I'm defending a case of a kid who's wasn't 21, had THC in their blood, right? And the argument is they can still be charged with any presence because the MRTMA applies and is only permissive for the use of people over the age of 21. That can't be a fucking result, can it? That can't be an interpretation. Anyways.
The penalties are pretty light, though. I mean, aren't they? I mean, more or less. I mean,
no. That crime in particular that still exists is without any. It's convicting them for having it in their system, nothing else. It's the same as a drunk driving. You might as well have blew a .15 or whatever.
That's fucked up.
It is.
Nobody can disagree on that. No one can disagree with you on that point. Really, seriously. Well, there's no argument about that. That's bad news. That's bad.
There's been some weird commentary on what impact the law has on people under the age of 21 in marijuana. I mean, like the idea that because it specifically speaks to people over the age of 21, what about if we, they can't mean that like all these 17, 18, 19, and 20-year-old kids are still subject to felonies. It can't be.
Well, that's not what it says.
I know that, but...
And it specifically addresses underage use, and it makes it not a crime. I don't know that it fixes the driving issue, though, Michael. We knew that was going to be a problem. I didn't think that it would manifest itself in that particular way, but it did.
Reading the statute itself, even to, it's weird the way it's written is in the poignant area, Tim, just to make things even more, it says, this is what is not allowed. And it says you can't drive while you're impaired. Right? And then it says you can't deliver to someone under the age of 21. You can't do this to a person under 21. So the one section that kind of cries out for what the prohibition is in the law doesn't have an age regarding driving, but it does for all the other. Anyways, so...
was there bad driving?
No, the any presence argument.
Oh, I know. I understand. I'm asking the question.
In my case that I'm talking about, it's.
Well, you don't have to answer that.
I don't know. I mean, there's no camera video. I don't know. The cop said something. I don't know.
Crossing the fog line.
No. It's like a.
That's what they always love to say. Oh, he's crossing
going
the
up
fog
to the
line.
store after studying for finals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the Red Bull.
Whatever.
Gives you wings.
Jacked up on the old Red Bull.
That's the thing, by the way. They could arrest you for that too. Any impairments? They give you a DRE.
Impairment of the Red Bull.
They give you a DRE evaluation.
DRE will come take you down.
So Tim, what do you think? I mean, what do you think the major? I mean, we sit here now. It's what day is it? It's what is it? June or is it almost June? May 2021. What do you think are the pressing issues going forward? I mean, even on a global Michigan global market, do you think there's going to be takeover of the big businesses? Is there still space in the marketplace? If you got a comment, what do you think is pressing? Do you think there's a lot that's still going to happen, or you think it's going to become less significant and kind of fade into like every other business?
I look at it as a wide open market right now. Nobody, that I'm aware of has any big advantage. The political process is paralyzed at this point, and for better or worse. And I would always normally, just let things work themselves out. So
sure.
There's, it's everybody's got a good shot. I don't see any really seated threats. Stuff can always happen and all that, but it's the market will sort it out. Whoever has the best product and best system, they're going to get the business. But it shouldn't be some rigid thing, and I don't think it will be. I think we got the best of all worlds. That's all I'm saying.
Sure.
I wouldn't change anything.
And you don't see a threat coming from the legislature per se in terms of
no.
In terms of caregivers, you see that in the future for like a state law amendment.
Not in the immediate future.
Okay, all right.
The political process could come together. You get 3/4 supermajority. Change marijuana. Are you kidding? We got a serious election coming up.
Okay, all right. Right.
They'll pass some emergency, quick thing, but hey, come on.
All right.
Delta 8, it may get banned, but we're, I've suggested, hey, let's not rush to ban it.
Right. There's no reason to ban it yet. It hasn't killed anybody as far as we know.
Damn right.
Anyways, so then, and you don't see, and you don't. I mean, you're like whatever like energy you're open to in the world. None of that is feeding you the local. You don't see like the local banning of caregivers. That's not something that's gotten onto your radar.
No.
That's fair.
No,
Okay.
not really. I've seen no significant. There's been a few stories here and there, but I have not gotten any sense anywhere.
All right.
And I rural Michigan pretty well now.
Sure.
And there's no massive idea of I got to get this caregiver. No.
Right.
Not
Okay.
like that.
So you think things are going well, and it'll become more. I mean, it normalizes every day, and that.
It'll be like a nothing burger.
Okay. All right.
It'll be a nothing burger. It will not be anything that's really. There will be market saturation. Okay, that's my prediction. There will be a certain level of market saturation.
But over time, more and more people have access to the market. More cities will be opting in.
Price will ultimately go down.
And caregivers will just become less important because there'll be more activity in the market, or do you think they'll fade away that way? You think that's what's going to just blend into and fade out, or retain their?
I would go with the blend-in theory.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be nice.
It's a much fonder sunset picture. You know what I mean? It's like got a pretty, like that's nice. It's not anything, banning or like illegalize, make it illegal. It's just kind of, they fit in, and that's what it is. That's much, and that's the way I agree. It should be that way. I mean, that's easy, right? There's not enough there to really. What are you doing? Why are you trying to? If they are doing it, and if they do it in one place, they really don't need to. Whatever. It's one stout. It's still. It's not for. But anyways.
That have an attitude.
Listen. There was something that came up that was kind of interesting. Chad held up that ordinance violation that they're throwing at him. That, you fast forward to the end of the story, and it's $400 for the city for your fucking lawn. Okay, let's not ignore this reality that our state, which relies heavily on the production of dollars from the criminal justice system. I'm not just saying this. If you don't believe me, read the trial court funding report, which concluded it's broken because all these district courts are relying on the citizens that come in there to pay for the budget. This goes across the board for other local governments, and in simple terms, it's a mismanagement of government to the greatest magnitude, that we have too much government and the local governments beefing themselves up into this power structure that they become in building, like castles that have become district courts because that's the place where the money gets delivered to. All of that utilize the prohibition of marijuana as a way to kind of feed the system. Let's not kid ourselves. At one point, it was 40% of the budget of the state police lab was being spent on testing marijuana, 2013, 14, 15, 16. And those cases are coming out of these districts, these little cities and all that. So where's their money going? And I think what Chad had pointed out was, yes, they do step up they do get it from other types of ordinance violations, requiring people to pull permits if they're going to do construction, and all that caregiving behavior is stuff that goes on without the need to get permission for any of it because it's a residential. But I do think that there may be altruistic method. It may not be just to kind of run them out of town. They may really just, let me say it this way. It may be truly just attempt to get cash grab. We've lost all this money from criminalizing it. Now these caregivers are going to have to pay us. You know what I mean? But but that's not what's happening. To me, they're putting limitations on it. The language is written in such a way that it's banning, and it's because of the premise that it's a home occupation, which are all three problematic. But I think there's some interesting principles in the that have to be kind of articulated or agreed upon. I think from the concept of getting behind the caregivers in general, and I realized and alluded to it earlier because we have to be aware of whoever it is that's advocating for caregivers, that there is this perception, not something that anyone would concede is true, but that some people may be taking advantage of it, just like in any other world. And certainly that is not a reason to end caregivers. But what would be the position of a caregiver if asked, what do you think about the illegal activity? You know what I mean? And having a position on that, that the ones that are taking advantage of. I don't think caregivers, some professions have a code of reporting, others that are. I don't think it needs to go that chance to pull it back. I know it's saying that, Chad. Trust me. I'm joking. But these are some issues that, if you're going to be political about it, that, and you're advocating for people. Well, okay, Mr. Morrow, what if you want caregivers to survive? What about the guys? What if the city finds out, or, some information comes about that the, these two houses next to each other, there's one guy living in both houses. He's got, 100 plants in each, and he's selling it at his back door every 3 months. What are we going to do about him? That's a question that, it's going to inevitably come up. And it may not even be true. They may not even be that person, but the story's been told, and the scare and the threat has already been ignited. You know what I mean? And that's the talk of what's driving, if there is a need to. I do think there is one, obviously. You and I, I'm not saying this because Tim, it was a factual dispute, but we'll have to get some empirical data to make our case for Tim. But what do you think about that, Chad? I don't know. I mean, unless you have an answer, I'm not putting you on the spot right now, but I think that a lot of people have come to define caregiving differently these days. You know what I mean? I think even the people in Genesee County that we know, generally speaking, are almost, getting the seeds of their labor in the negative in a way, because they've been able to function caregiving wise, pretty much in a green zone, different than most. I mean, it doesn't say there isn't some criminal cases that have arisen out of Genesee County, but there's certainly been a lot of activity there, farmers markets, blah, 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 and it certainly the kind of home occupation way. And a lot of those cities that we know are using that now as a premise to flip it on them. And it almost seems a little hypocritical for some of them. That is, if there's one, I'm not speaking about it specifically that I know of, but if any of them that have, been commercializing it in that regard, that their greatest argument is that it's not a home occupation, it's not a business. We're just want to go for 5 patients. I could see this kind of stuff being resonating in the debate if we were to get a forum or a discussion with, people that would be on the fence, so to speak. What do you think about all that?
Well, I think personally, like on the break, me and Tim were kind of talking there, and I think what I had mentioned was a solution to some of this would be to not amend the MMA at all. Tim also had mentioned that he don't see anything in the imminent future, but that also means that forming an organization, getting a voice in Lansing, having somebody to represent us and everything else, to prepare for anything that may happen down the road. Because it is a slow process in politics, but by the time it happens, that's why we need somebody there. And a solution to some of these problems would be to expand on the recreational law. These places, we have lounge license now. I only know of one, and from what I've been told, I haven't been there, but I've been told that you can't even go in the place without going into the dispensary next door and buying marijuana first. So that's not what I anticipated seeing when I voted for this. Honestly, I didn't vote for it. I was out of town.
It's either that or you pay $10. If your receipt isn't from the same day, then it's $10 from what I read.
Okay. So
there's no law on that, by the way. That's a local policy, it seems, like a business policy. I can tell you that.
There's still some revenue there, but what I'm getting at is, like, if you could expand on this law, like the social equity to me has been kind of just laughable as to date. But these licenses, like a lounge or a special event, perfect applicants for these social equity licenses. And then how do they do them? They're already cheaper. They don't require a whole bunch of startup to have a lounge or even an event, because it's just really, it can be a spot for a weekend or whatever you want to do. But in a way, because like I said earlier on break, Tim, there's regardless if it's 72 or 12 or whatever we're talking, 2.5 ounces is what you're allowed in the medical law. But under recreational law, you're allowed to keep everything that you yield, that you grow at your house off 12 plants. And that can be a lot. It can be 12 pounds. It can be 24 pounds, depending, outdoors, something like that.
Let me share something. Let me throw out a thought. Let me share something. The way the law was written back in 2007, this was a completely different world. The idea at that time was to create chaos in the system. Very rigid, really screwy system, really very harsh. And the idea create a law the way we did, that was a real monkey wrench into the system. It really caused them a lot of problems, heartburn. Hey, yeah, really. And like today, these seem almost like irrelevancies, so to speak. But, it's still the law.
Right. Oh, I agree 100%. That it was a monkey wrench, and it was a well done monkey wrench. But with that said, back to the rec law, if you were able to allow these people that are over the age of 21 to take some of their harvest to an event or to a lounge, rent a booth. For how many years we saw the High Times Cup go on in Clyde? How many years? And there was booths upon booths upon booths upon booths of caregivers, establishing brands, establishing names, selling meds. Some tested, some not. Nobody died. Nobody got sick. Nobody went to the hospital. There wasn't problems. Nobody left the place and robbed the bank down the road or nothing like that. So there's no excuse to sit there and say that this is a threat to society. The only thing that it could do is, I guess, possibly give these licensees a little bit of, loss of, a crumb off the crust of the pie. But it's still going to just generate, people to pay their light bills, have a little fun, get back involved in an event or something like that, have permits, have, entry costs, have, there's revenue. There's a lot of pluses there. So that I think is one possible solution to some of these businesses, is give them a different alternative legal route.
Well, part of the thing is, as I remember, it was never like a business thing for some people. Well, for me specifically, it was what is the best way of keeping less advantaged or poor folks or whatever, anybody really, any of us seriously, from getting a boot in the ass. because of marijuana. And the whole idea was to destabilize the system so they couldn't do that to little people anymore. And we're all little people. I'm a little person. I don't know if you look at it on a level, but that was the whole idea. And get the boot off of old people, so to speak, and then let it evolve. No, I mean, I even support. I was with this MRC, whatever the fuck, to give a monopoly, in order to get legal. Yeah, I was involved in that, and it's like something worth getting involved in for a while, and then it fell apart. It got screwed up, and it didn't work out.
Well, there's definitely a lot more to talk about as we move forward in forming the organization and getting more clarification and all that stuff. And I'm sure Michael would love to have you guys on again.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, I enjoyed the discourse and the expansion of this topic and commentary. Any final thoughts, anyone, before we wrap it up? Go ahead, Amanda.
No, I thought it was a good show, good conversation. I'm looking forward to hearing more about, getting together and banning, all the caregivers banding together and just, if nothing else, just to have a platform to share knowledge and to, continue to connect with each other as we always have.
This is a good thing. This is a good thing. I want to say that. I like this, really. It's a good idea. As you say, it's never on something to be too, maybe a little cautious, looking out for threats and getting ready and stuff like that as needed. And it's a good thing. Really good.
Yep,
thing.
Absolutely.
Really nice.
Like Tim said, we started as a monkey wrench and now we're just at that evolving time. We got to evolve with everything else.
That's right. That's right. One bite at a time, right? That's how you eat the elephant.
Yep.
So thank you guys.
Absolutely.
All right. Good night, guys. Thanks for joining. We'll talk to you guys next week. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org.
Before you plead, call me, Attorney Michael Komorn.
An important and historical farm crop in American agriculture is returned after having been classified as a controlled substance and illegal. On December 20th, 2018, the President signed the Farm Bill, also known as the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, into law. The signing of the act was great news for the hemp industry, which amended the definition of marijuana in the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Hemp is now defined as the plant, Cannabis sativa L, and any part of the plant, growing or not, with less than 0.3% THC concentration on a dry basis. The plant itself is no longer a controlled substance. Hemp is one of the most versatile plants on earth. From clothing, fiber, paper, building materials, hempcrete, biofuels, CBD, and medical uses, it has been a part of America's industry for over 200 years. Even the United States Constitution was drafted on hemp paper. The time is now. If you're thinking of getting in the farming or processing of hemp, contact our global experts, legal, and consultation teams to make sure that you're on the right road when you venture into the new hemp industrial revolution. Michigan Hemp Industries has been a leader and advocate for the return of the hemp industry. So come be a part of the new revolution in agriculture in Michigan.